Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, everyone, welcome to another weekly wrap up, and I am so excited to talk to you about what I got into this week, both the good, the bad, the fanfics, the ups and downs of this week. There is a deep freeze going on. I hope you are safe wherever you are. I hope you can watch this wherever you are. I hope you have internet. Things I think are going to be quite crazy. So yeah, just a little bit of that, but before we dive into it, a little tease of what's ahead. I had both a DNF this week and a 6-star read. I read some fanfics. I curled up on the couch to stay warm. I was also good at going to the gym. So it was like all over. It's the coldest week of the year here in North Dakota, as well as I think it will be in a lot of places for a lot of people. I know there are some storms happening in places, but we're not actually getting a storm, but we are having a deep freeze. And as well as it being super cold, after I finish this video, get it filmed and uploaded, I am helping one of my friends move into their house today. It is now literally the coldest week of the year. Okay, we've had nicer weather, unseasonally warm weather earlier in January, and now it is negative 20 degrees, negative 30 with a wind chill, and we're supposed to go move them in. So anyway, I know you guys don't necessarily care about random friends of mine that you don't know, but you know, in the Midwest, we talk about the weather. I know it's not just the Midwest, it's everywhere, but we talk about the weather in the Midwest. And so I got to start off with really not looking forward to that today. So I'm excited to talk about books first and then get all bundled up and go over there. Really not looking forward to that, but I love my friends and they would help me. And when I moved into this apartment, it was July and it was the hottest day of the year. So it's really kind of the, I mean, that was literally 11 years ago now, but I've always been someone who's moved out of places during the hottest months of the year. So it's kind of, you know, the reverse karma, I guess, or something of like helping during the coldest of the year. But there. And for the month of January, and I may continue it into February, we'll just see. I'm not actually posting new videos on Tuesdays. You may have noticed that. This last Tuesday I didn't post a video, and I shared a bit about that in the last 2 videos I've uploaded, but I'm sure, you know, well, maybe you didn't see because those videos didn't really get viewed by anybody, and that's kind of the point. That is not a poor me thing. I've talked about this in other videos. In January and February, viewership is just always down. People are usually kind of tapped out after the holidays, or they have New Year's resolutions to be online less, which I absolutely understand. But in an effort to kind of help myself recharge and to just not overly stress about, you know, if people are taking some time offline, I feel like I need to take a breather and reset as well and not push myself to try to gain new viewers and like hustle if other people are taking a break as well. And so I'm not going to be putting up a main channel video on Tuesdays. Instead, I'm going to try to get more regular with putting my vlogs up on Tuesdays on my Patreon. So that's the other reason I'm mentioning my Patreon, which I mean, I know I mention every week because that is a big part of how I get paid doing this full time and everything. But if you are missing getting a video on Tuesdays, Patreon will be a good way to get that, because normally with my Patreon vlogs, they're not perfectly scheduled like that. They just go up every 10 to 15 days as I'm able to get them done. But since I'm not going to be doing a Tuesday video for, you know, possibly the next month or 2, I'm with Patreon trying to commit to getting those up on Tuesdays. So that is what I wanted to culminate with explaining to you guys. If you missed that Tuesday video, no, I didn't just forget. No, I wasn't sick. I didn't miss one. There will not be videos on Tuesdays for the next little while. And that is really like hard for me to do just because of habit. Like, I've had a video go up on Tuesdays for literally 7 years. I mean, maybe I didn't perfectly decide on Tuesdays for that long, but at least for 5 years, I've had videos Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, and Sundays. And that is very difficult to break that habit. But currently it's going to be Thursday, Saturday, Sundays. I think 3 videos a week is still plenty. But, you know, the YouTube algorithm does not like when you change things. So it's pretty mad at me for doing that. So if you want to watch the last 2 videos I put out, that would definitely help. I put up my heated rivalry video about it. I mean, it's about heated rivalry, but it's more so, I know a lot of people maybe are getting burned out on heated rivalry. I don't know, maybe they are, but it's more about, can Hollywood make more romance adaptations that are as faithful as heated rivalry? So if you yourself didn't watch heated rivalry or don't care, I don't spend that much actual time on heated rivalry in the video, even though, yes, the video itself seems like it's marketed that way because that's what everyone wants to see. The video itself is talking about romance adaptations and how I think Hollywood needs to adapt to please the fans of romance if they want to be successful. And then I put up my February TBR, which was really fun. So enough of an intro. You guys know I already talked too much, but let's get into what I read. And again, thank you to everyone who supports what I do. You guys make this worthwhile, and even when it's hard, even when I see the numbers really go down, I know that you guys still make what I do worthwhile. And I'm at almost 24,000 subscribers, and I'm at 8 years of doing this, and you guys make it worthwhile. Absolutely, you do. And even when I have videos that are not successful and it makes me feel like, why are you even doing that? That is just lies. That is just imposter syndrome trying to poke its way in. I do this for you guys, but I also do it because I enjoy doing it. And taking Tuesdays off is just a way to, you know, help make sure I don't lose the joy of doing it. And there are many other aspects of it I love doing, which is the actual reading of books. And when you see, you know, some of the books that I got into this week, which again, some of the fics that I read this week, that really felt more like what I was able to do a few years back just for the joy of it. And that gets me really, really excited. All right, because the first thing that I finished was a fic. So speaking of heated rivalry, although I'll tell you, not all the fics I read were heated rivalry this time. Not all of them were. Some of them were. But this one was one that I saw mentioned on Threads, and I was very interested in it because this one is an AU. What I mean by that is this one's canonical up until like the 4th episode. But then like what it does in this one is that in this one there is a plane crash. But I was interested because there had been a plane crash fic going around that someone was writing. Well, let me tell you what it is. This one's called That's All It Takes by King Kindly is what this one's called. Okay. And I had heard that there was a fic out there that someone had written where it, like, Ilya dies and Shane is left, like, where Ilya died. And no one had ever known that Shane loved him. And I was like, who would write that? You're evil. Like, I'd heard that one, right? I don't want to read those. Well, in this case, what happens in this one is that this happens, it's not in the long game that this one happens. This happens instead of, when does this one happen? Okay, I gotta think. In this one, it happens, what point does it happen at? Now I'm trying to remember. So it happens in the point in this one before Scott has won the cup. So it would happen in 2017. So it's happened before the cottage, and before they've admitted that they love each other is where it's supposed to happen. Okay. So it's happened before Scott has kissed Kip and before Scott has won the cup. And I don't think Shane has been, like, injured either. So it would be also, I don't think, and I think Ilya's dad has died, and they play the game, so I don't even remember, like, whatever. The point is, it's one of the plane rides, and instead of it being that, like, instead of, like, Shane finding out in the locker room that, like, oh, Ilya's dad died or whatever, he finds out that, oh, their plane had crashed. But again, it's not in the long game where it happens, where Shane and Ilya are together yet. They, like, haven't told each other they loved each other yet. Nobody knows that Shane loves Ilya at all. And Shane just gets news that their plane crashed. And again, he's not dead, but, like, they don't know. And so Shane just finds out that the plane has crashed, and he's literally, like, having a crash out, and they're on the bus, like, back to the arena or whatever, and Hayden, like, sees Shane freaking out, and they, like, literally, like, Shane makes them, like, stop the bus when he hears that the Boston's plane has crashed, and he, like, gets off the bus and, like, throws up, and Hayden is like, dude, what's going on? And literally, like, in that moment, Hayden is like, dude, I know. Like, Hayden literally kind of instantly puts it together. He's like, I know Ilya is Boston Lily, but you can't be freaking out like this because, like, I get it, but other people think this is your rival, and, like, you can be empathetic, but, like, you're freaking out. You need to pull it together. And so basically Hayden kind of steps up, you know, to be his friend. Well, I mean, he is his friend, but he, like, steps up and he's like, dude, you need to pull it together. And so, but Shane is, like, literally, he has no way to find out what's going on. So then we flash to Ilya and the Raiders, and they have had an emergency landing, like, literally in the mountains, and their pilot has died, and, like, one of the players has died. Nobody that, like, we know, but they're stranded in a plane crash, and they end up stranded there for, like, 3 days. So this fic, the first, like, few chapters of the fic are Ilya and the crew, like, surviving, and they're not, like, it's not full on needing to be, like, lost or anything. Like, they have the emergency beacon, and they're in a bit of, like, rugged terrain where it's, like, it takes a while for people to, like, get to them, but they're not in, like, real danger. But we have Shane, who, because he's nothing to anyone, right? He's absolutely devastated, and he now has to admit to his parents that he's in love with Ilya, and he has no way to, like, find out if Ilya's okay. And at, you know, once the Raiders are found, he gets his dad and his mom, like, they go with him to Boston, and Shane and his dad actually go to the airport when the Raiders are found, and there is cameras there and stuff, and Shane goes and literally hugs Ilya in front of people. Thankfully, though, there's only one, like, picture taken, and they just see it as, like, these guys have known each other for 8 years, and nobody makes a huge deal about it. And in fact, it's only Cliff Marlowe who even ever, like, suspects anything about it, because he knows Ilya the best at the Raiders. And later on in the fic, he kind of is like, is there something with you and Shane? And he, like, Ilya swears him to secrecy and stuff. So the way then that this one plays out, which I know I'm kind of spoiling, if you don't want to know, skip to the next thing. But what I liked about this fic is that it forces them into admitting how they feel. They actually both tell their, like Shane gets introduced to Svetlana, and Svetlana becomes Ilya's, like, contact, so that now if anything ever happens with Ilya, Svetlana would know to contact Shane. But what happens then is, when now the summer comes, like, Ilya's team, they're too messed up to, like, make it to the finals, and Shane doesn't make it to the finals, and Ilya ends up being with Shane when when Scott's team makes it to the cup, and they're actually together now when Scott kisses Kip at the when Skip has their kiss at the cup finals or whatever, when they win the championship, when they win, and the end of the story is them being like, there could be a hope for our future then. So anywho, I made it through this whole fic or whatever. So I really liked this one. As I'll always say, I didn't rate this fic. I'll put a link to it. I enjoyed this one a lot, and it wasn't super long. Did I write down how many this one was? I didn't write down how many this one was because it's in here, but this one wasn't super long. I think it was a couple hundred pages when all was said and done, but I really liked this one. I liked this as an alternative, and it definitely was a good alternative to the one I was hearing about that was a tragedy, where what would happen if he like actually died and that stuff. So, but it was also interesting too, because in this case, they haven't said they were in love yet. They weren't at that point yet because it was before the cottage and they hadn't quite said they love each other yet. Ilya had said he loved him to himself before. Because, yeah, this would have been, Ilya's dad had just died, but Ilya was thinking of breaking up with Shane still. So Shane must have been injured already. I just don't remember it. I think he must be injured already. And it was after the game that Shane was injured. And Ilya was like, they were like flying back home or something. That must have been what it is. I don't remember. The very beginning of that one is fuzzy because then the plane crash happens or whatever. So anywho, moving along. Okay. Next was the one I DNF'd. So, I want to give a warning for this one because this was a Patreon read. And I just want to give a warning to my lovely patron who I read this one for. I did DNF this one. So, if you, my sweet friend, don't want to hear my thoughts about this one, just skip to the next book on this one. I already went in on a vlog about this for Patreon, about like how this one got picked and everything. So I won't go into all of that on here. But I always say, like, it's never a patron's fault really when a book gets picked. I've talked about that a ton. My patrons all give me choice, like, besides the monthly pick, which gets voted on and I don't get a choice. But patrons who monthly I choose a book, they give me a list of books to pick from. It's my responsibility to read up on the book. I just usually don't because I like to be surprised. I like to try new authors. I picked this book way back at the mid-November because this was actually a December book that I was really late on because of, we talked about this, because of brain fog. I just wasn't in the mood yet. And my patron was like, it's no worries, get to it when you want. My patrons are wonderful to me. And at the time when I picked it, I thought I would be in a more dark romance mood. And then in December, was not in a dark romance mood again. So my patron was like, it's okay, it's okay. And then by the time it was time to read this one, and I had already bought the book and already had the book, I didn't know who Harley Beck was. I should say what this is. This is Obsession by Harley Beck. I knew nothing about Harley Beck. I saw what the triggers were. I read the blurb. And again, at the time I picked the book, I saw what the triggers were. I saw what it was. And I was like, ooh, interesting. Okay. But just because you see what the triggers are, that doesn't mean you know what they mean in the context of a book, right? We all know that. Unless I was willing to actually read the spoilers for the book, which again, I am, let's be honest here, we all know this about me. I'm a pretty accomplished person when it comes to how dark a book is. I'm not generally like squeamish about anything. I thought this sounded interesting, where it's a journalist is interviewing a serial killer who's on death row for what I thought was supposedly rape and murdering women. That is what I heard what the blurb was. I read what the trigger warnings are, and I was like, whoa, okay. But again, that was back in December. So then it was this last week, And I was like, okay, Jen, you need to get to this person's book. Again, my patron is very patient with me. And again, I won't go through the long and painfulness of it because I did that in a vlog where I really ranted about it. And I'm not interested in like ripping it apart on my public video here because I'm over it. But what I didn't understand is that, yes, he did actually rape and murder these women. It isn't supposed, it isn't a lie, and it also wasn't a thing where, like, I know this is going to sound super demented, but it wasn't like people who deserved it, you know? And I know, even saying that sounds like, how could anyone, blah, blah, blah. But you know what I mean. There are dark romances where you would read one where it's like, oh, they raped and murdered someone, and there are authors who find a way to explain it where it's not how it sounds, right? Don't tell me you haven't read a dark romance where there's an explanation for the things they do and it's not really how it seems. So I didn't know. And again, I don't know Harley Beck. I didn't know what this one was supposed to be. I had no clue. So didn't know what I was getting into. Didn't know that, oh no, he actually did this and our heroine's actually going to fall in love with a man who raped and murdered women. Both the MC and FMC have been assaulted and raped by family members. So there was childhood sexual abuse. They both have murdered people who abused them. So again, all that stuff was trigger warninged in there. Nothing was a surprise. It was all right there for me if I wanted to read it. So I DNF'd this. I didn't rate the book. I didn't leave a nasty whatever. I just also didn't do my homework enough on it. I was given a list of books to choose from. And when I saw the tagline of this, that it was a reporter interviewing a guy on death row, I was like, oh, wow, okay. And I wanted to give it a try. And then when I DNF'd it, I had a lot of people on my Instagram who were like, oh, wow, I can't believe you, blah, 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 blah. And I should have done my homework. That's basically all I'll say about it, okay? And again, if you're a patron, you can watch in my last vlog how I really felt about that. And yeah, like I said, I'm not going to rant about it here because I'm not shaming anyone else who did like it. This has a very high rating on Instagram, and I'd assume for two reasons. Number one, the people reading it read the trigger warnings, so they only read the book if they wanted to read this. So then if they wanted to read this, they probably liked it, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they know what Harley Beck is about. Like, this is more of like a horror, in my opinion. This was horror. The only other thing I'll say, like, in defense for me is that, you guys know this, I am a true crime, I don't like saying junkie about it, but I am very knowledgeable in true crime. And this really felt like Ted Bundy. I don't even want to call fan fiction because that makes me want to hurl. Like, this felt like a reimagining of Ted Bundy. And this woman is actually what disturbed me. The character, the female character, it felt like she was idolizing Ted Bundy. And so being in her head is what was tough. Like, just to break it apart for me. Again, I'm not shaming anyone who enjoyed this book. I will continue to say that. I'm not shaming my patron who enjoyed the book. I'm not shaming anyone who liked it because they knew what they were getting into with it. And I think that's fascinating. My friend Mary tells me she enjoys Harley Beck because it's horror. And in the same way people like horror when they go into it, they know what they're getting into and they want to be disturbed when they read that, and I completely understand. But let me just explain what was tough for me so that if you ever recommend a book like this to me, you will understand why I don't want to read it, okay? What was tough for me, honestly, wasn't the male POV, because getting his point of view about what made him this type of serial offender, because that's what he is, I understand, okay? I'm not attracted to it. I don't like it, okay? This is not a San Mariano type of offender to me. This isn't even a Pam Godwin type of offender to me. It's not that type, okay? It's not the kind that I'm ever going to feel attraction for. It's not. But the type of abuse that he had, what was happening to him because of his mother, I understood why he started doing what he was doing to women. What I didn't understand was the FMC's point of view and why she was attracted to a man like that. I just couldn't get there. And so when we got to the sexual parts of the book where she wanted him to do that to her, after what she had lived through and after what had been done to her, when she started like begging this guy to fuck her and was craving him, and even in the very first scenes where she's interviewing him, because again, she's a reporter and she seeks this guy out and is sitting across from him and looking into the eyes of this man that she knows raped and murdered women, innocent women, again, innocent women. And she's literally like immediately getting wet and thinking about moisture dripping down her thighs while she's in prison looking at a rapist. I was immediately like, well, I wanted to hurl when she's having those feelings because I don't understand them. Maybe if we had walked through to get to the feelings first, maybe the author could have got me there, but we started with her sitting across from him and feeling tingly feelings in her vagina before we walked to it. So that started me off in the bad place. That's the thing, right? Like, we didn't walk to that spot, we ran to that spot. And with this type of story, I wanted to feel some like the horror creep in of like listening to him talk and him describe the assaults, and then maybe her go home and like be creeped in her skin that she's disturbed by the fact that her panties were wet when she got home. Like, it's hard to even say that. But if that had been the journey of it, of her being horrified that she got home and discovered that she was wet after listening to him talk about what he'd done, that could have been a whole other level of this story. But she was just so horned up for this depraved murderer from stepping into the room to interview him. And I don't understand how we got there because the author didn't walk me to it, that it was never going to work for me, right? Like if we're going to get to the point where we're attracted to this, even if the author already knows in their mind the psychology of why our heroine is attracted to this, I need you to lead me there. I can't just have you throw me into it because, like, this isn't me judging anyone else who is there too. I genuinely just want to know how it works for other people too. Because I've read disturbing books where I get turned on by what I'm reading as well, right? I understand the erotic level that comes with horror in there too, you know? I've read those, okay? I understand that the sultry or, that literally is what, like, the snuff part of a snuff film comes from, right? Like, there is something that can be inherently sexual about the deviant and disturbing, okay? And I'm, again, not judging anyone for liking it. I just don't think the author knows how to quite lead people to it. She just was like, oh, well, she's just hot because he's good looking. And I'm like, but he's describing raping and killing an innocent woman. Or he's describing his mother raping him as a child. Why are you getting turned on by that at this point, right? So that's what I feel like was missing. Like I said, I wasn't going to rant, and I'm not ranting. I'm genuinely asking. And so because the author didn't like walk me through the psychology, she's getting turned on by everything this guy says. And I'm like, but you didn't do the work as to why it's happening. She just was from, you know, and I marked it obviously because I was annotating that. I've already sent it off to her, to the patron, but that's to me where I was immediately like, this. And I hate, you guys know, I hate using this word because, again, I'm not trying to degrade anyone who enjoys it. I will keep reiterating that because I get people who will get offended. I've had people before who get mad when I say this, but I will never lie to you guys. I get the ick if you don't justify it. And as an author, if you're trying to sell me on it, you have to justify it. And like, I think of one of the best examples now that I use of the Hills of Shivers and Shadows, right? There is a character in there who loves his abuser because it's the only father that he's ever known. And so even though this man has raped and abused him, when that man dies, this character is sad and in some ways angry at the person who's taking him away. And he's heartbroken over that. And he even says, there's a scene when later on in the book where not after the person's died yet, before this person has killed the person who's raped him, but he offers himself to his abuser to save someone else from it. And he even tells his abuser, like, he loves him. And he acknowledges it. And he's like, I know you do. And if this is like the only way I can have your affection, like, I'll take it. And that is always so poignant to me and disturbing as hell. Like, it is disturbing. It's disturbing. But Pam Godwin, through her work up into that point in the book, she doesn't just hit you with that information in the first 10% of the book. That is 70% into the book. And so by the time she hits you with a scene like that, I was weeping and so conflicted because I know why the character is saying those things. And I understand his complex feelings, right? Now, I hate to compare anyone to Pam Godwin because she is on a level of her own. But if you're taking on this type of content where you're having a woman who's been incestuously abused, and then she meets a man who has also been incestuously abused, and is describing his crimes to a woman, and she's getting turned on in prison, I would like you to have built it up just a little bit more. Then all he has to do is describe sex, and her cunt is weeping. Okay, like, it's not enough. So, again, that was my first DNF of the year, and I was bummed to do that, but when I reached, that wasn't even the point I DNF'd it at. Because it's a Patreon book, I gave it 55% into it. When it's a Patreon book, I push way further than I would normally. But it did get its first spot in the DNF graveyard, and I wasn't mad about getting to put it in my little graveyard in my book. So there we go. Anyway, I spent more time than I wanted to, but I did want to explain myself, I guess, with that, because when I have books like that where, like, I chose it, I just want to be clear why I have to DNF it, because it's one thing to read what trigger warnings are, and then it's another thing to then still get triggered by the trigger warning, right? Like, it's not that the trigger warning triggered me. It's that I decided that, okay, well, you provided the trigger warning, but I don't think you were a good steward of what you used it with, right? Like, that's still up to me to decide if you did a good job with it or not, Next up, I had Her Pretty Little Revenge by Nikki Harris. So this will probably be a quick one to talk about because I can't say too much because this is a pretty, like, spoilery book. This is technically, I think, book 7 in a series, but it is like the third in a series about this couple. So yeah, Her Pretty Little Revenge is like the third book in the Clay, Butcher, and Fawn series, but it is 7 in the Butcher Brothers series. So, Yeah, by Nikki Harris. So this is a Mafia. It's a Cosa Nostra series, but they're like, I think they're Australian, right? The series is Australian. I think they are. But this is a series that has like, so this series was Our Thing, Cosa Nostra, which I actually didn't read the first two. But I started with His Pretty Little Burden, and then I read His Pretty Little Queen. And then there's Their Broken Legend, Her Pretty Little Revenge, and then eventually I read Her Way. I actually read for my Patreon. But then there's His Perfect Little Heirs, which actually is at the beginning of this book. So if you didn't read that when that released, it's in the beginning of Her Pretty Little Revenge. So when you get Her Pretty Little Revenge, you'll read His Perfect Little Heirs. But you can start with His Pretty Little Burden, but you cannot start with Her Pretty Little Revenge, because that is literally basically an epilogue or continuation of their story. So I don't want to go through the whole thing, but Sweet Little Fawn, this story starts when she's just turned 18. And just to give a quick thing, like, she shows up pregnant and abused at basically the door of Clay's place. And he is a powerful mafia don. He's actually like married to someone at this point. Although it is a political marriage for sure. And he plans to like use her for his own ends, but they end up falling in love and yada, yada, yada. And she ends up actually losing that pregnancy. But which is very traumatic and everything. And they fall in love with one another. And he actually makes her his pretty little queen, which is the next one that's about them. And then we have His Pretty Little Revenge, which is the one that just came out. So I was very excited to read this. I actually was surprised that we were getting this one. I didn't know if we would. But again, I'd read His Pretty Little Heirs. I forgot when that one came out. I guess, did it just come out last year? I don't know. But it's very clear how much Nikki Harris loves this couple. They are definitely her kinkiest. This is a, I wouldn't call them quite like daddy little girl dynamics. That's not really what it is, but it is definitely a dom sub dynamic. There's a lot of like cock warming and like kind of like pacifier situation, which I know that sounds crazy, but when she needs to like calm down, he will pacify her with his dick sometimes, which I think was one of the reasons why I first wanted to read this book. I remember because I was, back then I was reading a lot more like read this because of the kink type of thing. It was something that I was into. But I honestly just really love their relationship. And in His Pretty Little Revenge, they're basically like, they have twins at this point. That's what happens in His Pretty Little Heir, which again, that's what this one starts with. The first 90 pages are her like pregnancy and having the babies. And then Her Pretty Little Revenge is the lead up to their grand mafia wedding. And him getting some revenge for her past, basically, because there are still some people who are responsible for how she ended up pregnant and abused on his doorstep in the beginning of His Pretty Little Burden. And there are a few people who need to get stuff needs to get straightened out for how they had treated her and stuff like that. So that's a pretty horrible explanation of this, but I think this whole series is really good. I know a lot of people really love Our Thing and Cosa Nostra. Again, I still haven't read all of them. I never really wanted to read the first two. I know some people really, really love them. I know they do, but they're so agonizing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the ones I've read. I love Clay and Fawn. They're my favorite. So you can definitely read His Pretty Little Burden and His Pretty Little Queen. The trigger warnings are rough. Nikki Harris does not play nice, so be prepared. But I love how Clay is with Fawn, and especially in his Pretty Little Revenge. Like, everyone loves Fawn. Like, she really is very protected and adored by all of the Butcher family. She is kind of almost infantilized in some aspects, so I know that not everyone enjoys reading about her. Okay, I understand that a lot of people are uncomfortable by her. Like, I get it. But I really like, I see how she's grown and come into her own. And she deserves to be treated like a fairy princess after what she's been through. And I also like how, like, she's still young. And she gets to be kind of Clay's, like, safe place and his peace. And the thing that he gets to protect and be very gentle and loving with when he doesn't get to be that anywhere else. And I just think that's really beautiful. So, yeah, again, that was a really horrible way to explain it, but I just had a really great time reading it. And I was surprised, too, because it's been so long since I'd been in that world. But I immediately remembered everything. And I think starting with his Pretty Little Heirs helped because I know I had read that short story. Like, I remember reading it. But it helped to read it again because it caught me up on, like, everything. So then diving into her Pretty Little Revenge, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember. Like, starting with his Perfect Heirs, whatever. Reading that first and then going into it was good. So, right, y'all. Next up was my 6-star read, okay? And I gotta tell you, no one was more surprised than me that this was 6 stars. I mean, I knew I would probably like it, even though I knew I was also gonna suffer, because I usually love this author's books, and I usually suffer through this author's books. But I could not stop. I read this book all in one sitting, and it absolutely gutted me from start to finish, as I think it has for most people who've read it. I don't think a lot of people will find this very comfortable, and I don't think everyone will want to read it. As usual, when I read a book that has one of my main red flags in it, I was prepared to be very uncomfortable, but it's from one of the only authors that I let break one of my rules. So, I read Silent Flames by Kate C. Wells, which, if you've seen this book around or know anything, this is a book that starts with cheating. Not accidental or misunderstanding, or they have a deal where it's allowed and it's just whatever. Like, no, there's blatant cheating happens in the first chapter. And then it all spirals into hell. And it's an angsty, painful, gut-wrenching ride, okay? So, yeah, this is Silent Flames. And this was a part of a author collab, and I didn't read any of the other ones, but I guess it's a, like, brother collab. So there's 4 brothers, and each author told one of the brothers. But I was waiting for this one, and I actually thought I was going to get an arc, but I didn't. I don't know if I was kicked off of her team or what, if I missed something about it. I don't know what happened there. Maybe I was supposed to sign up for it, and I just didn't because it was handed out in December. I don't know what happened. It's fine. I wouldn't have probably been able to get to it in December anyway, and I maybe would have been scared to read it because of what the trigger warnings were. So who cares? But I was actually, like, I was planning it. It was on my TBR for December. But with what the trigger warning was, I was scared. But then I started seeing other people reading it, and actually Mary from More to Mary was asking me for recommendations that had cheating in them. And I was like, girl, you know I don't read those. And I was like, but I heard one just came out. Maybe you want to try it. And Mary has actually never read Kate C. Wells, which I don't mean to steal her thunder, but I know she has now because I've like gotten her to read a couple. She's read a few of Casey Wells specifically because I got her hooked on her. But as I was recommending her this, I was like, I knew that my friend Erin and I had seen that Crystal had read it too. And they both had rated it really highly, which, I mean, I knew that it would be good. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm already using up so much time in this video about it. So anyway, the point being, I was like, it's only 300 pages. And I had just finished Her Pretty Little Revenge. And I was like, I just want to dive right into another book. And I was like, let's just give this a go. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off into this one. And as soon as I started it, I was like, my guts were so tight. And it gave me the same feeling that Return to Monte Carlo did, but different. I mean, Return to Monte Carlo didn't have cheating in it. But if you've read that book, you know, like you just are so mad at the hero, but you're so uncomfortable. But you also just want them to talk to each other and figure it out. And it also just felt like such real problems too. So anyway, Silent Flames is about a millionaire couple. It's an age gap. They have 2 children. We have Adrian and Cora. And it starts with Cora bringing her 2 children to surprise her husband at the penthouse at night. And I don't want to go into full detail because I don't want to talk for ages and ages, but I gave this book 6 stars, so I also really want to talk about it. Like, I'm so conflicted on this. But I don't want to talk too much in this video because I will obviously talk about this video in my favorites of the month and in other videos. So I'll keep it pretty basic in this video, I think, because we'll talk about it more later in the month. So I'll keep it basic for now. Okay. So she shows up at like the penthouse to like surprise him. And she isn't quite sure why she showed up. But she does kind of have a weird feeling, and like basically his staff is being weird, and she shows up with their 2 little girls. One that she's like still breastfeeding, and I think their other little girl is like 4. And she catches her husband with one of his coworkers. And literally this woman is riding her husband's dick when she gets off the elevator. And he is like, "What are you doing here?" And she's literally in shock. And he's like, "Get out." And he literally doesn't tell the woman to get off of his dick, but he tells her to get the girls out of there. And because he doesn't want his kids to like see his dick, but he gets her to leave. And she's just immediately like spiraling about it and is horrified and is heartbroken because she loves her husband and she can't believe he's doing this. And then when he comes to talk to her, he's so cold and she doesn't understand what happened. She has always thought he is a good dad and a good husband and that he is thoughtful, though yes, he is very much about business. He's, you know, they've been married for, I think it's like 5 years. He is much older than her, but she thought they married for love. And he basically like destroys all that in a couple of minutes by saying, "You knew what you were doing. You've caught me. Why did you bring our kids down here in the middle of the night? You knew you were going to catch me. You've done it. What do you want? We're not getting a divorce. You signed an ironclad prenup. So what are you trying to get out of this?" And she's just literally shocked that he's not trying to make up an excuse or trying to get out of it. He's literally just so cold, and it honestly sends her into a little bit of a spiral too. Because before he even could talk to her, it becomes clear that Cora is also hiding some things because she's not ready to that's right, she's not ready to talk to him yet either. And so like she puts the girls to bed and she does this kind of really scary thing, and she actually like breaks a glass and like walks over it. So she immediately has this inclination for like self-harm. But when we're in her head, we realize she's not like doing that to like, I don't know, to get attention from anyone else. She's doing it to like ground her own mind, to kind of like prove reality. So, but she like hurts herself, which is kind of scary thing. But anyway, when she finally, so then she's talking with him and he's like, you're not taking the children, you're not leaving. So what was the point of this? Trying to embarrass me and the children? Like, why would you bring the children here? You knew what you were going to find. And she's shocked because she's like, no, I wasn't. He's like, yes, you were. You must have heard her on the phone when you called me. And she realizes that when she called him earlier that night, that maybe she did hear something. Maybe she was trying to do this. Like, she is like, just doesn't understand what's going on. She thought he loved her. And he's like, I've never said that I loved you. This was always what it was. And it just feels so confusing. And just to continue with her track for a little bit, she will end up going to a divorce attorney, and she starts being told about this prenup that she signed, and she starts learning that really this like the stuff in this prenup was all about the children, and that if she ever were to leave, her husband would keep the children, but she will get paid millions of dollars for each child that she has, and each year longer she stays married to him, she'll make more and more money, and she's free to leave, or if she leaves the marriage at certain points, she will get more and more money, but basically, like, she signed away any rights to her children, so if she ever leaves, he keeps the kids, but she could make millions of dollars. Each subsequent child she has, she'll make more and more money, but also this prenup, the lawyers that were on her side were all hired by her husband. So she never had anyone looking out for her. She was very young when she married him. She didn't have any good counsel. And so now she's married to him. And if she ever leaves, she'll lose her children. She could be a very wealthy woman, but, you know, it's all a facade for her. So she kind of snaps a little bit in this way of, she's like, well, okay, well, I didn't realize it was a game, and now that I know it's a game, I'm not going to play. So that's what she's thinking. But now we get Adrian's point of view, and this is where I was actually shocked, okay? So let me refrain a bit, too, of, like, my mind. A lot of the stuff in Cora's point of view, like, this didn't shock me in my reading experience. Like I said, my stomach feels very tight when I'm reading it. You empathize for Cora so deeply. These are things I've read when reading Kate C. Wells before, how she writes a female who has no power, how she feels completely powerless, feeling so desperate for her children. There was a lot of shades of feeling like Run, Posey, Run, where the man has everything and you have nothing, trying to come up with a plan and realizing like there's no way out. Only in this case, there is children involved. Her children are everything. A little bit of the, like I said, of like Return to Monte Carlo, where you thought you were so happy, realizing how empty it was, that it was all just fake, that it was all just like game for you. So all of that felt very familiar. Where this book absolutely sent me to another place, like where it broke me, really, and I was not expecting it, was in Adrian's point of views, okay? And again, I'll try not to talk on this for ages because I'll talk about it more in other videos through the month. But when we got Adrian's point of views, I was not expecting his point of views to move me so much, because what can you get from the cheater's point of view that will make you empathize with them, right? Especially when you are a woman reading the cheater's point of view. And Kate C. Wells brilliantly started to lay out Adrian's mindset. And first off, she doesn't try to immediately warm you up to him. And it's also clear that, like, he isn't a mind like, he isn't a psychopath. He isn't, one of her mafia-minded guys. This wasn't a game to him either. Like, there wasn't something he was trying to, do, really. But as we get his POVs, you start to see the insecurities in him. You start to see what his family history did to him. You learn about the games that his parents played with each other. And you start to learn how deeply in love with his wife he is. And that he doesn't know what love is. And so the feelings he was having for his wife, how deeply terrified this man was about those feelings. And that he was drowning in them. And that he was desperate for control of them because he didn't know what they were. And this book, K.T. Wells isn't trying to justify those. He's not trying to justify those. But he saw patterns of behavior in his parents, and he saw how his father would cheat, how his mother would react, how his father would placate, how his mother would be deferential then, how his father would give gifts, how the cycle would begin again, how his father would cheat, how his mother would overreact, how his father would placate, how he would keep control that way. And when Adrian starts to feel overwhelmed with love for his wife and children, when for him having a wife and having kids was all supposed to be a part of the plan, continue the legacy, having this overwhelming love for his two little girls who he thinks are absolute perfect angels that he just feels so unworthy to have, and that he feels he will ruin. And having a wife that looks at him with so much love that he thinks can't possibly be real. He thinks he needs to get a look on her face that is something he can recognize, right? And again, not to spoil everything, but he doesn't realize what love on her face looked like until she comes through that elevator door and sees him fucking someone else. And he sees that love in her eyes die. And he realizes that she really loved him. And he killed it. And now he'll never have that again. And the rest of this book, as we get his chapters, we see this man unraveling. And what he thought was his life unraveling before, and him leading up to, he's not passive in this. He doesn't just, let this woman, he does kind of, but he lets this woman work her moves on him, and he just kind of is like, maybe this is what I'm looking for. Maybe doing things the way my father did is the way to go. It isn't until it's too late that he realizes what he had. And so for the rest of the book, we watch him absolutely unravel. And we watch our heroine stop trying to put on the perfect facade as well. And these two absolutely, it's just madness. And there's another line in here, guys, I'm telling you, all the times I cried in this book, we're always in Adrian's point of view. And it's like, it's so, Casey Wells is brilliant. She's brilliant because I felt pain and anger for Cora. I mean, I absolutely did. And it's like, I can't explain to you feeling bad for Adrian, because I did. I felt empathy for Adrian. I did. And it's so hard to explain that, because how do you feel bad for a cheater? Like, how do you feel bad for him? How do you feel bad for him? And it's not that I'm like, oh, poor you. You're having sex with a different woman. Oh my God. But when you read the book and you start to get like the whole picture, this wasn't some guy who was serially like cheating on other women because he had a hole to fill and his wife wasn't doing it for him. This was a guy in a serious like mental spiral who didn't know what was wrong with him and didn't realize that like dude needed therapy about family trauma. They both have family trauma. She has other stuff too that gets addressed in this book, of course. Like, obviously, he shouldn't have been looking for sex with a different woman. That is absolutely not what he should have done. Like, it's not. But anyway. But there's a line in here that it was the first time that I cried for him. And it's, his wife is, for a good part of the book, has been sleeping in the nursery with the girls, but he'll walk in each night and like check on them, and he's looking at her sleeping in this tiny bed with the girls, and he's looking at them and he's like, he didn't realize until this moment that he hated himself. And he was like, he didn't realize that he hated himself until he looked at his wife's eyes when she'd seen him, and when he'd kept another woman on his dick so that his children didn't see his dick, but his wife had to see someone else fucking him. And he didn't realize how much he hated himself until that moment, that he had that much self-hatred in him, that he'd wanted his wife to hate him too. You know, like, he didn't realize that. Like, and like, I don't know, it does not sound right when I'm explaining it to you, but that was just like the first moment. There's a lot in here. And again, you know, I mentioned briefly how in the beginning of this, the heroine does some self-harm to prove that she's in reality. I wouldn't call this one like a full dark romance in the way some other Casey Wells, like, this really wasn't like Mafia or anything, but I did categorize this as a dark romance because there are some secrets about Cora, like how there are some reasons why she didn't have anyone else to stand up for her when she so easily married him. She doesn't really have any family. She was an orphan when she found him. There are some secrets of her past as well, about why she has some trauma too. So she's not a completely innocent person either. She's definitely has some cracks in her that when she is confronted with something so traumatic as this, Adrian's pushed someone who's been keeping a facade up. And it's been a very pleasant facade. She has loved being his wife and a mother to his children. But he doesn't quite know what he's unleashed. And at the same time that he's having these very painful revelations, she is not just going to lie down and take it. And she might be stuck in this because of this prenup and because she doesn't have any way to legally fight him, but he has unleashed a tigress and she is not going to go easily into any of this. And again, because he's not a psychopath, he's not. He may be willing to play dirty, and there's some dangerous things he's willing to do. We'll say that. But also, he... it's not like this guy is like a Dario who's just gonna go like murder everyone, right? So, like, there's some pretty equal like fights that they're willing to get into is what I'll say. So anyway, I need to move along. We still literally have a lot to get through in this one. But you guys, if you don't, if you're like me and if you see the content warning for a cheating spouse and you would throw your Kindle across the room, but you are willing to read complex characters, I highly recommend this book. I will be recommending it for the rest of the year, okay? This was my first 6-star read. I'm going to talk about it the rest of the year, and I'm probably going to cry like this every time I talk about it, because I cried so many times. I keep crying about it. Like, I've never felt so much compassion for someone who cheated on their wife. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this was gut-wrenching. I felt so much empathy, because each time it like comes back around and you learn more and more about what led, like, because first it's so black and white of just like, dude, what the fuck? And each time it comes back around of him remembering what leads him to the point of fucking this woman, you feel more agony for him every time. And I still am never like, oh, you poor man, like, why'd you do this? But I feel more like empathy for him every time. And it's more tragic to me that he let it get to that point every time. And it's more believable to me that Cora would forgive him every time. And so by the very end of the book, when Cora forgives him, because, spoiler alert, this has an AGA, I would have forgiven him too. And I think that is the real power, because when you read the first chapter of this and you read how cold he is, you are going to look at me crying for him and say, Jen, there's no way in hell that you could love this as much, and feel free to laugh at me, you know, because by the end, I think you'll forgive him too. Or most of you will. Because, yeah, even, like, the first chapter of it, you're like, there's no way in hell anyone forgives this guy, because he just seems absolutely the coldest, most calculated guy. And you're just like, you are the slime on the bottom of a pond. Like, you don't deserve anything. And things are not what they appear at all. Okay, we have to move on. We'll talk about that book again. Okay, we can go faster for you. The next one was Come What May by Corinne Michaels. And this was her newest release. This was apparently the 4th and last book in Ember Falls, which was funny because I just was looking through one of the earlier books because I did a recommendation of it. And this book originally had 5 books in it. So I don't know what happened to that one. Did anyone remember what happened? If she moved it around or what's going on with it? But this book was originally, or series was supposed to be 5, but it's 4. So Come What May, I listened to the duet audio by Austin Stone and Samantha Brentmore. This one is actually a publicist and a rancher, aka a businessman, and it's Tessa and Killian. They actually have a one-night stand, though, first. When Tessa goes to stay in Ember Falls, she's supposed to meet up with her client the next day, and she ends up having a one-night stand with Killian. And when she's leaving his place, she gets the address of where she's supposed to meet her client, and it ends up being the place that she's at right then. So her and Killian quickly have to say, oops, I guess we won't be hooking up again because we're supposed to work together. And then he needs help with his business because his business partner has disappeared, and it's causing his so he runs a ranch where he sells, like, you know, horses, racehorses, stud fees, blah, 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 all that stuff. And the reputation is ruined because his trainer disappeared and a bunch of his business has been pulling out. She also ends up finding out that, so he's 19 years older than her, big age gap. And then she eventually finds out that he is her best friend's long lost dad as well. Her friend knows who her dad is, but didn't tell her friend her dad's name until later on. So it's cute. It was fun. I mean, I gave it 5 stars. Like, I liked it, but it also, it was simple. Love the found family aspect. I love Ember Falls. It was a good time. So yeah, gave it 5 stars, 3 on the spice scale. Good stuff. All right. Next up was another fic. And this was one that wasn't hauling off. This one was Pansy and Neville. All right. This was dirty, flirty, and vindictive. Okay. And this is one I've actually been waiting for a while. Because when I first looked it up, it was actually over a year ago, and it was just like getting started. And this one didn't get finished until last October. And then I had it saved and I just didn't get around to it, right? But when I was looking up fics in December, I saw that it had just finished in October. So this is the Pansy and Neville story that is happening during Bloody, Slutty, and Pathetic. And so it runs parallel to that one. And if you've read Bloody, Slutty, and Pathetic, you have read parts of Neville and Pansy and Theo and Charlie's story. You get some of their POVs throughout that story as well. But what Murdaugh, who is the fanfic author of that one, they had said they weren't going to write the standalone story for these two, but they changed their mind and ended up writing a 900-page fic. Like, literally, this is 170,000 words, which is like 900 pages. And they ended up filling out Neville's story. That was originally why they didn't do it, they said, is that they didn't think they had enough to say about Neville, but they went in and they filled it out. So this is a marriage law, and that is what the Hermione and Draco one is. I really love that fic. I won't go into everything about it, but this one runs parallel, and I do think you should read Bloody, Slutty, and Pathetic first, because like that story is still very important to this one. But yeah, this one, they also find out that they're a match, and I just really love this one. And Neville, his behind the scenes is very interesting. So he's a professor at Hogwarts as well, but he like doesn't ever go in the castle. He only like works in like the greenhouse. He still has like PTSD about being in the castle. This is about 6 years after the Battle of Hogwarts. So there's still 6th and 7th years who like remember him from when he was there. And he is also still like works with the Aurors sometimes, and he makes he helps with making like potions and tinctures still to help capture some of the baddies. So he's working behind the scenes with like Charlie and Bill and some of the people hunting down some of the dirty wizards and everything, or the leftover baddies who are still running around. And then there's also Neville and Pansy. So what's interesting though is like there are a lot of flashbacks to what Neville was doing during the years after the war through now. And so we learn about his failed relationships with Luna and with Hannah, which is very interesting, learning about his like failed dating lives, which I won't get into here, but he's been through some stuff, I will say. And then he's finally with Pansy, and it's very interesting because from what we've seen in Bloody, Slutty, and Pathetic, Neville is kind of like a dom with Pansy. And so it would make you think that he's like super confident and very like powerful. But when you find out his history with Luna and Hannah, it's actually very interesting how he's able to be so supportive for Pansy. I really liked it. So I really enjoyed reading this. Again, I will leave a link to it so you can read it yourself. It was very long, but it was very good. And I'm actually reading another Panville fic right now that I'm liking a lot. And hopefully I'll have that done for next week. Okay, then I read Thorns by The Loveliest Crime, and this one is a haul and off. And so this isn't finished, which is crazy because it was just a one-shot when I read it. And last night, when I went to go get the link, the fanfic author has added 2 more chapters to it. But they're not like done with both of them. So I had already put it in my spreadsheet. And it was only 120 pages. It was just a one-shot. But last night I read the second chapter, which was another 100 pages. And then they're going to do 1 more chapter. So I already have written it down. But I'm going to wait and talk about it once they're all done with it, because I don't know what the ending is yet now. Because it was just a one-shot about Ilya and Shane. But I'm just going to save it because I think they'll be done with it by next week. They've said they will. And then I'll tell you about the whole thing. So, anyway, I read that. And then the last thing I read was Just Breaking the Rules by Lauren Blakely. And this is the start of a Love and Hockey series or something. Or another hockey team or whatever. And this one is about... who was this? This was Corbin and Mabel. And they actually started a bakery together. And this is a brother's best friend. And this was duet narrated by Samantha Brentmore and Teddy Hamilton. And yeah, honestly don't have too much to say about this. It was so long, you guys. So long. But she has the dream of starting a bakery. And he has always wanted to start a bakery as well. But he's still in hockey. And he's a single dad. And he doesn't really have the time. And she doesn't really have the money to do it. And so her brother is the part-time GM or assistant GM, and he knows about, or the hockey team that Corbin plays on. And so he knows that his sister needs the funding, and she actually gets left a firehouse by her grandmother. And so Corbin offers to put up the money if she will allow him to be her partner and give her the funding, or part of the funding, as well as some recipes to put in as well. And so they go into business together and have a slow burn friendship to lovers. So I loved it, but this was almost 500 pages. It was way too slow. They don't even get the bakery started till almost halfway in. And then they're will they, won't they for another 250 pages. And so it was like a 3.5 star that I rounded to a 4. And I don't know. I think I might be reaching the end of my Lauren Blakely now, because the last like 3 books of hers have been the same thing, where they've just been like either a fake dating or a slow burn that just never ends. So I think we're reaching the phase we're in. I mean, this is what happened with me with Lauren Blakely before, is I went through a really long period where I was bored with them. And then when I started her again, they were exciting again, right? It just happens with authors who have a really high volume where they pump them out. They start to feel really similar, and so you need to take a break sometimes and then get back into them again. So, all right, I need to wrap this one up. I've been talking for way too long, but there was just a lot to talk about this week with both the good, the bad, the deadly, and all in between. So, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this. And again, make sure you check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting what I do here. I hope you survive the deep freeze, and we'll see you next time. Bye.